Here are the ways The Simpsons predicted the future. Tiger attack. Wild animals that rip other animals to shreds can be, maybe, unpredictable? Who would have thunk that keeping a tiger captive and messing with it on stage to entertain a bunch of drunk gamblers would eventually go wrong? Apparently, The Simpsons figured that one out a decade before it happened in real life. In Season 5, Episode 10, entitled Springfield, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalized Gambling, that's exactly what transpires. In that 1993 episode, the city government of Springfield decides to legalize gambling. That, of course, turns that week's episode into an allegory about Las Vegas. And watch what happens. Mr. Burns opens a casino where two German magicians named Gunter and Ernst perform a routine that spoofs the famous Siegfried and Roy show from Las Vegas. The main attraction? A tiger on a unicycle. In the episode, Gunter and Ernst are predictably mauled by their giant cat captive. Well, the same thing happened to the real Siegfried and Roy a decade later in 2003. Roy was paralyzed when a real tiger attacked his real body, putting an end to the duo's showbiz career. That's gotta hurt. It's the kind of obvious told you so moment that the real world never anticipates, but The Simpsons could see it coming with the focused eye of the tiger. No, we're not singing that song. Do that on your own time.
We're watching the Nobel Prize announcements live from Stockholm.
Ooh, the Nobies.
Nobel Prize winner. Meet Bengt Holmström. He's a Finnish economist who won the Nobel Prize in 2016. He's best known for trying to understand what's called the principal-agent problem. And it's a problem you might be familiar with. It's when people with power, known as agents, do things that impact people without power, the principals. If there are agents running around out there, it can be dangerous to the principal, the one without the power. Well, The Simpsons is a show that makes fun of people with the power that make dumb decisions that impact everyone. So it's no surprise that in 2010, The Simpsons sort of predicted Holmström's win. In Season 22, Episode 1, Elementary School Musical, Lisa bets with Martin, Milhouse, and Database on who will win the Nobel Prize in economics. Guess who's listed in that betting pool as one of Martin's little cards? None other than Bengt Holmström. Except Martin actually circles Jagdish Bhagwati as his pick. But the fact that the writers of that episode know who Bengt Holmström was is pretty incredible. The financial crisis of 2008 was only 2 years old when that episode came out, so being aware of economics, trying to understand how it happened, makes sense for The Simpsons.
It's not you, Milhouse. I just don't plan to ever get married.
Smartwatches. This one is a bit of a stretch since plenty of sci-fi films, books, and TV shows have predicted the smartwatch. Dick Tracy, The Jetsons, and 1998 Lost in Space all had smartwatches in them. It's kind of an obvious device to predict if you're trying to write about the future, but need to draw on stuff you already know, like the watch. But only The Simpsons could predict how banal and disappointing new gadgets like the smartwatch could be. That's not to say they're not helpful and amazing when it comes to some stuff, but predictably, The Simpsons episode that foresaw smartwatches almost 2 decades before their time depicts them as not working as advertised. The episode in question is episode 19 of season 6, called Lisa's Wedding. In this 1995 episode, Lisa is transported 15 years into the future after visiting a fortune teller at the local Renaissance fair. In the future, everyone has smartwatches. Lisa's future fiance tries to propose marriage to her through her new smartwatch, but the message gets cut off. So he has to go to plan B and summons a cow wearing a sign that says, "Marry me." In serious sci-fi settings, the predicted future technology always works. But if you're The Simpsons, your job is to remind the audience how disappointing even the best new gadgets can sometimes be. FIFA corruption scandal. FIFA is the governing body of the international sport of soccer, or football, if you're from anywhere else besides the country where The Simpsons is produced, and Australia. If you don't already know, FIFA is a seriously corrupt organization. In 2015, 14 of the FIFA officials were arrested on corruption charges by the US Justice Department. Because that's just what happens when Uncle Sam catches you calling it football and not soccer. No, they were seriously corrupt and were accused of racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. Apparently, they were willing to take bribes from any country in return for influencing where the next World Cup would take place. Since the World Cup is often financially bad for the host country, that makes it even worse. And in 2014, Nike supposedly paid $40 million in bribes to become the only sportswear company to equip the players at the tournament. The probe into FIFA corruption began in 2015, but The Simpsons predicted the result a year early in 2014. In episode 16 of season 25, called You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, the season did more than just predict the outcome of the FIFA investigation. They also predicted that Germany would beat Brazil in that year's World Cup, which they totally did.
No, Lisa, it's not like the government is listening to everybody's conversation.
NSA spying. The Simpsons first aired in 1989, but it wasn't until 2007 that The Simpsons movie finally came out. In the film, Lake Springfield is horribly polluted as usual, but it gets worse when Homer dumps a whole bunch of pig manure into the water. The fumes from the lake get so bad that President Arnold Schwarzenegger quarantines the whole town under a futuristic biodome. Fun fact, Biodome is actually a 1996 movie starring Pauly Shore. It sucks, don't watch it. The Springfield residents eventually escape the dome, but Marge and the kids are later captured because a conversation of theirs was recorded by none other than the NSA. The NSA stands for National Security Agency. They focus on signal intelligence, the gathering of intel by intercepting electronic signals like email, phone calls, and internet traffic. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the global intelligence community basically took the gloves off and decided to record everything. That didn't mean they listened to everyone's conversations, but they certainly recorded them to listen to later. The NSA was at the center of this newfound intel aggression. In 2013, Edward Snowden blew the lid on the full extent of the NSA's surveillance program. We won't go into all the details because we don't have time. Point is, once again, The Simpsons called it years before.
Think of things that people need, but which don't exist yet.
You mean like an electric blanket mobile?
The Higgs boson. The Higgs boson is a special kind of subatomic particle. It's also called the God particle. Why? Well, until 2012, it was the missing piece in the particle physics toolkit. Oh, we're getting all smarty pants up in CBR today. Quantum physics basically explains all the forces in the universe except gravity, since we use Einstein's theory of relativity for that one. The interactions between all the different particles are used by physicists to understand the underlying forces that determine how the universe works on a fundamental level. You still with us? All right. Don't ask us to go into details. It's way too complicated. Point is, for a long time, none of the predictions about how the universe worked matched the experiment results physicists got from using particle accelerators to break particles apart. They didn't understand how mass worked because they couldn't find the particle that gave the other particles mass. They called the missing particle the Higgs boson, after Peter Higgs, the physicist who predicted its existence in the 60s. But guess who else predicted the Higgs boson? Homer Simpson in the 1998 episode, The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace. At one point, we see Homer standing in front of a blackboard with an equation that describes the mass of the Higgs boson. According to Dr. Simon Singh, that equation is very close to the real results physicists got in 2012. Not bad for America's dumbest dad.
Hello, I'd like to vote for president, governor, and anything that will take money away from our parks and libraries.
Faulty voting machines. America's first encounter with faulty voting machines happened in November 2000. That's when George W. Bush, a Republican, ran against the Democrat Al Gore. That night it wasn't clear who had won because of problems with voting machines in Florida. People had trouble understanding the voting card layout, and the hole puncher that was supposed to mark who you're voting for didn't quite work, leading to the famous Hanging Chad controversy. The vote was so close that Florida law demanded a recount. Ultimately, the Supreme Court got involved and, well, gave the presidency to Bush. This seriously undermined his popularity before the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Since then, American states have been working hard to replace old voting machines with electronic ones. But because of the 2000 election, many still worry that their vote will be tampered with, and that even electronic voting machines can be hacked. This actually happened in 2012 when video footage showed a Pennsylvania voting machine switching a vote from Barack Obama to Mitt Romney. As you can probably guess, The Simpsons predicted this one. In a 2008 episode Treehouse of Horror XIX, Homer tries to vote for Barack Obama, but his vote keeps getting switched to John McCain. Of course, we now know that the best way to throw an election is to manipulate social media algorithms. Miss Hanging Chads yet?
Hey, Doc, take a memo on your Newton.
Autocorrect. Ever try to text someone a message like "Grandma is in the garage," only to realize too late that you just wrote "Grandma is in the grave"? Or how often have you had your favorite four-letter word changed to duck? That's autocorrect for you. Thing is, autocorrects on a smartphone could be a lot worse. Actually, there was once a time when it was worse. The Simpsons had something to say about it in 1994. Back then, Apple released a personal digital assistant called Newton. A PDA was like an iPod with no music that only takes notes. It came with a stylus, so no finger mashing on a keyboard, and the autocorrect wasn't very good. In the 1994 episode Lisa on Ice, the Springfield Elementary School meets for an all-school assembly. During the proceedings, the bully Kearney asks his partner in crime Dolph to take a memo to beat up Martin on his Newton. He tries, but it autocorrects to eat up Martha. Fast forward to the age of the smartphone. Apple engineer Nitin Ganatra told Fast Company that this episode compelled his team to really make sure they made the iPhone keyboard as good as it could be. On his team, eat up Martha became a shorthand for failing to get the keyboard to work on an acceptable level. The cultural impact of The Simpsons is pretty darn deep.
Now, Lisa, there's only one last thing you have to do to be a little monster. I'll do anything but sing.
Lady Gaga's halftime show. One of the greatest Super Bowl halftime shows in history was the 2017 performance by Lady Gaga. Sure, there have been some great performances in recent memory. Who can forget the left shark from Katy Perry's 2015 performance? Still, it's hard to beat an act that involves a pop star descending from the top of the stadium dome on a bunch of wires. The nerd in you probably thought Spider-Gwen had come to life. Of course, The Simpsons predicted it almost 5 years before. In the 2012 episode Lisa Goes Gaga, Lisa is voted the most unpopular student in school. She tries to change everyone's attitude by ghostwriting self-serving messages online, but Bart exposes her and she's even more unpopular than ever. Meanwhile, Lady Gaga visits Springfield and receives a psychic message that Lisa needs help. After initially rejecting Gaga's help, Lisa eventually sings a duet with Gaga at a concert. Lo and behold, Lady Gaga is wearing an almost carbon copy of her outfit from the 2017 Super Bowl.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
President Donald Trump. Okay, at CBR, we try to avoid wading into political controversy, though that's hard when it comes to The Simpsons. But let's be honest, deep in your heart, you knew America would one day elect the personification of reality TV as president. You just didn't know who it would be before 2016. Love him or hate him, that's exactly what Trump is. Trump has always been a joke on late-night TV and shows like The Simpsons since he first gained fame in the 80s. But it was in the year 2000 that The Simpsons actually predicted what was then unthinkable, President Donald Trump. It was episode 17 of season 11, called Bart to the Future. Bart gets transported into, yeah, you guessed it, the future, and Lisa is president. And what's the major challenge of her administration? The country is broke because of the previous administration of Trump. If only that were the worst of it in real life. The Trump era is fraud unlike any other in recent history. The writer and voice of this video is honestly struggling to keep the full extent of his partisan feelings out of what should be a fun internet video. So all we'll say is that The Simpsons really underestimated how crazy this one would be.
Chinese fleet is advancing. Just build another wall. Yes, in the ocean, loser.